Join me, Buck Woody, and Marisa Matthews as we guide you through the Learning T-SQL modules on Microsoft Learn.
So working with data with T-SQL is pretty cool, but I'm thinking for my reporting, do I want to group things together or total them up?
Okay, that brings us not only to working with data, but to applying some functions over the data, like your groupings or totaling and so on. Functions are just built-in statements and code we want to use to do things. Let me show you a few types. I'm just going to use the query editor here once again as just a display. Scalar values operate on a single row and get a single value back. Logical compare two values to determine a single output. Rankings operate on a partition or set of rows. Row sets return a virtual table that you can use in a from clause. We'll take a look at that. And then the one you're talking about a lot is aggregates. We can take a lot of one or more input values and return a single sort of summarizing value.
Great. How can we use a few of those?
Yeah, okay. Let's see. We'll start with some scalar functions. There's actually quite a few functions, more even than we're showing you here, and you can read about those in the documentation. One of the most common use cases for functions are to work with dates and times. You'll see that in our design, we used a date time data type for the events table. The date time stores not only month, day, and year of a value, but also the hours, minutes, and even seconds of that value. But perhaps we just want to know all of the events happening in 2023. We can use a function to reach in and get just the year part of the start date value. Let me show you kind of how that works. So I'll paste this in. We're going to select the name from the events where, and here's our function. You see it starts with the word year. In this case, that's the name of the function. We open the parentheses and we put what we want it to operate on. So it's going to go get the year value, or excuse me, the start date value, and then just bring back the year. And then it's going to compare that to 2023. Let's take a look. And here are the events that happen in 2023. By the way, there's also a day and even math we can do on dates with another function called dateDiff, D-I-F-F. We've actually already used logical functions in our select predicate. Remember when we used the like, and or? We can also use logical functions to reverse the condition, such as adding not. So instead of getting what we asked for, we negate those values.
That's pretty handy. I will definitely be using that date function. I mean, I have to admit, this is a lot easier and more powerful than working with a spreadsheet. I hate to admit it, but it is.
It really is. Another interesting function, by the way, allows us to show data by a rank or its place in a set. For instance, assume you want to know where the times rank in minutes from our sessions. You want to know the groupings of sessions and the lengths and how they sit in our data set. You can do that with the rank and over functions. Let me show you. It looks something like this. I'll just paste it in. We're going to select the top 100 sessions names and the sessions length, and we're going to get their rank, and we're going to rank them over the sessions by order descending, and we're going to call that rank by length, easy for me to say, from sessions, and we're going to order it. Wow, what's going on here? So we're going to go get these things, and we're going to use a rank functions over and order by functions. That means within the grouping of these, get me the rankings and order them by length. So let's run that, and you'll kind of see what comes back when we look at that. We see that the Intelligent Data Platform has a length of 50, and it sits within the ranks as number 1. So depending on what groupings we asked for, we could see this is our grouping of the longest sessions and the next longest and the next longest, and it would have those grouped up together. The over function of the statement gives the rank functions the details on what we want to group the values by.
What is that as statement? You've used it before in the self-joins lessons, I think.
Yeah, that's called an alias. You can alias any selection with a friendlier name just by adding as to it. For instance, we could use something here. I'll show you. It looks something like this. Let me paste that in. Select name from people, and I'm going to call the people table P, just a little easier to type, where P dot name. So if I've got really long names in my tables, this is kind of handy. So now I can do this, and you may have even seen me use it in joins and things like we did earlier. And so you can see it comes back and it just says P dot name. So that's where it's a little friendlier to work with, especially when we start getting really involved in some big joins.
So is a function something that I can use to start aggregating data, like counting things and so on?
Oh yeah, absolutely. For instance, if you would like to know how many sessions are at the SQL Bits event, now this is something that'd be a little harder to do in your spreadsheet. You can use the count function. I use this all the time. So let me show you this one. Select count star from events, enter join session to event, event ID to session ID, sessions, session ID to session ID. This is the same thing we had before. We just added this value. And we could put a where on here if we wanted to, but let's just run this as is.
Wait, what's that asterisk doing there?
I probably should have mentioned that earlier. If you want all the columns from a table, you can just use an asterisk. Since I'm just counting the rows, I just used it to save typing. Sorry, I should have showed that to you earlier. And now for numeric values, you can do more things than just those aggregates. Let me show you some of the cool things that you can do here. So let's assume that your boss, you know how your boss is, he'll sometimes ask you for all these metrics around your events and so on. What if we wanted to get all the sessions? We wanted to get the average minutes per session, the minimum minutes, the maximum minutes, and the total hours we spent. Well, we can do that with various functions. You can see all these aggregates come back very quickly.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty cool. I'd definitely be using that.
Yeah. And now, when we've been going along, by the way, I just wanted to let you know the system isn't doing exactly what we say, but it is doing what we mean.
Wait, what? What do you mean by that?
Okay. I'll tell you about that later. For now, know that the select and then the from and then the where statements are processed. The system actually has a new table now it builds that it can use, a virtual table. You can work with the virtual table before you see it with a couple of other functions. The first is group by. This statement does what it says. It groups the rows over what you get back. Let's say you want to group all the people you have in the people table by the type of person that they are. You can use the group statement to do that. Here, I'll show you a query that does that. So I'm going to select people type and then the people name from people, and I'm going to group the people by type and then by name. So if I run this, you'll see kind of what comes back, and we can see that we've got our event contacts, our speakers, and our speakers for Marisa Matthews. And of course, you can add an order by statement there to sort them and all of that. The key here is, once again, we're just building on the statements that you've already learned.
Yeah, I'm following.
Very cool. And after you do the group by operation, you can further filter the data that you grouped because of the way the operations work using the having clause. Let's say we want to group the people by type, but only if there's more than one person in the type, right? So we built this condition. I want to go after the people. Here, I'll show you. We'll just run a quick query that does exactly that. Once again, we're going to get people, and we're going to count the number of people in the type from the people table. We're going to group it by the people type, this one right here, but only where this pseudo table that we've sort of built here as we go, just as it's building up, has a count in the people names of more than one. So we're only going to get people back where there's more than one person in the type. And you can imagine all kinds of cool uses for that one. You can see there's 2 people in the speakers. You don't have to memorize this or anything, but let me show you exactly. I told you earlier that that's not what's really happening when you ask for things. Let me just show you what's happening under the covers. This is how, I'll paste it right over here in our query window again. This is what's happening under the covers when you send a query. The statement actually processes the select statement this way. It does froms, then wheres, then group bys, then havings, then selects, and then order bys.
Well, I'm glad I just don't have to memorize that, but I do see that it can affect how I'm building these queries.
Yeah,
There could also be effect if I don't think about how the system is processing the data.
right.
The lesson's pretty useful, Buck. I think I should go try out some date and other functions just to get the hang of it. I'll head over to those Learn modules.
Fantastic.